Hi, I'm Nicole Ferraro, and this is The Divide, a podcast from Light Reading exploring the ongoing digital divide, why and where it still exists, and what needs to be done to get people everywhere connected to reliable, high-speed internet. Today, I am joined by Angela Siefer, Executive Director for the National Digital Inclusion Alliance, or NDIA. The NDIA was recently announced as a preliminary recipient of a $25.7 million digital equity grant from the Biden administration's NTIA. We get into the details of that grant and discuss how the National Digital Inclusion Alliance intends to use that funding to support digital navigator programs and related efforts. We also get into the group's policy priorities and plans as we head into a second Trump administration, as well as threats to digital equity funding and more. All right. Angela, welcome back to the podcast. You were actually last on this podcast in 2021, but we've spoken several times since, and I've had several of your wonderful colleagues on the podcast. So it's great to see you again. Thank you so much for making the time for this. How's it going?
Things are going good. I'm excited to have this conversation with you, Nicole.
Me too. Always excited to talk with you and anyone at the National Digital Inclusion Alliance. But before we jump into our topic of the day, I thought I'd give you a quick opportunity just to reintroduce yourself and the organization for anyone who may be unfamiliar.
Sure. I'm Angela Siefer. I'm the Executive Director of the National Digital Inclusion Alliance, and I live in Columbus, Ohio.
Excellent. Okay, great intro, and we'll get more into the great work that NDIA does throughout this conversation, certainly. But the main reason I'm having you on today is because the NDIA was recently named a preliminary recipient of an award from the NTIA, the federal government agency. Let me give some background on this award and this program, and then I'll let you speak to what this funding is actually going to enable for your organization. So as a quick refresher for the audience, back in ye olde 2021, the federal government passed a law called the Infrastructure Investment and Jobs Act, also known as the Bipartisan Infrastructure Law. In that law was the $42.5 billion Broadband Equity Access and Deployment Program, the BEAD program. And then there was a smaller companion program, the $2.75 billion Digital Equity Act. Those are meant to work in concert. BEAD is meant to deploy the broadband where it still doesn't exist. And Digital Equity Act is supposed to fund organizations and state entities and local entities that are helping connect people to the internet and helping those people use the internet to its fullest extent, et cetera, et cetera. So the NTIA recently announced that it was awarding funds through one of the Digital Equity Act programs called the Digital Equity Competitive Grant Program. That is a $1.25 billion program that awards funding to organizations like yours, the National Digital Inclusion Alliance, in order to fund a variety of digital equity projects and efforts. So as much as I wanted to provide some background information, I'm sure people have already zoned out with that explanation, but it is a bit of a confusing program. The Digital Equity Act has 3 grant programs within it, I believe. And so this is one of the grant programs. Yeah. So that's a long way around saying congratulations. Your organization was provisionally awarded $25.7 million for activities including the expansion of your digital navigator programs, trainings, distribution of hotspots. I'm going to let you speak to all of that. Sure. But so I wanted to introduce the fact that you guys are one of 24 organizations that was awarded funding preliminarily through this grant program, and say congratulations and just let you speak to what this grant actually means for you guys. So take it away.
Thank you, Nicole. We're really excited. We're excited that we are in this preliminary group. We're also excited for all the others that are in this group. And we're excited for the ones who have yet to be named that are also coming along, because it is a lot of money. Our grant specifically is about building out the digital navigator model. So about 4 years ago, NDIA found ourselves discussing with our community this idea of a digital navigator and helping them define what it is. Some of them were already doing it, but they've been calling it different things. I mean, libraries really have been doing this for eons. They just didn't call it a digital navigator. And so we were able to define it with the community. And then with this opportunity for these grant funds, we found ourselves talking, what is the most impactful way that we would possibly be able to utilize this money? And it was to further that digital navigator model. So what we're going to do is help the digital navigators. Some of them have specialties, and specialties in the different meaningful use areas. And we all know how people use the internet. It's work, it's health, it's education, right? It's civic, social. There's a variety of ways that we could narrow in on how it is that individuals use the internet and what they get from it. And in all those areas, once you start narrowing, it starts to get very complicated. Or even when you're just trying to help somebody, you're like, well, I don't actually know how to help them with my chart, for example, right? Like this is a particular challenge that this person is having, and I don't have the expertise or the experience with this. And so by narrowing in on these different uses, these meaningful uses, then we will have individuals who can do that. But because we're doing it as a cohort, we have 13 sub-grantees spread across the country. They're in very different organizations. But because they all come from these different backgrounds, we're really excited about how they're going to be able to help each other. So that really that learning, and this is just the way NDIA has always operated, is that we learn from the community learns from each other. And so we are doing that together in this grant proposal.
Very cool. So when you say the sub-grantees, so are these like local organizations in each of the states? Explain that a little bit more
Yes.
for me.
So we chose 13 sub-grantees. They're in 11 states. Only 2 states have 2, Ohio and Arkansas. The rest of the states only have 1. And we went specifically looking for organizations who already had a digital navigator program, or something really similar that we would call a digital navigator program, something that could be scaled. So nobody's starting from scratch. They're all starting from some kind of understanding of providing technology to the folks that they serve. And also really important, these are all trusted institutions. So that is one of the biggest barriers to digital inclusion work, is that technology is confusing, it's intimidating. So if you don't have somebody who is already trusted, boy, you have a lot of steps to get past. So this way, we already started with the trust, and we already started with an understanding of digital navigators.
Okay, gotcha. So these are basically organizations that communities are already used to interacting with, and that they would know to go to these organizations and groups for support with their digital devices and other digital related issues, right?
Correct, yes.
Okay, gotcha. So that sounds like it's the main portion of what you're using this grant funding.
It is the main portion, and then NTIA required innovations in all of their grant proposals. It was necessary for the scoring, which we love doing that kind of thing anyhow. So we were like, yes, what are our innovations? And for us, it's the same thing that we always do, which is that we want to create resources that are available to the full community. So we'll learn from these 13 sites, and then we will create resources such as data tracking tools, more toolkits. We will fill in curriculum as needed, not creating lots of new curriculum. There's already lots of that. But like being able to create resources, then we make available to everyone. And we've always operated, and it's a way for us to manage this very large grant and put a lot of attention on 13 sites while still meeting our mission, which is to strengthen the digital equity field itself.
Gotcha. Okay. So when the NTIA announced these awards, it used some specific language to indicate that these were provisional. The NTIA in its press release specifically said that awards will be issued following budget review and processing. So since the announcement, what has your job been to actually go get that money? What happens now for you guys?
My job is to pay very close attention to my email, more so than somebody who cares about work-life balance should really do. Like I'm checking it constantly because I don't know when, and we've already have gotten a question where they were like, fill out this form. like that's the kind of stuff that I expect we're going to get more of that from them. And so we have to keep watching for that. And we are encouraging all of the other recommended for award organizations to do the same thing. Like pay really close attention to your email, because these requests are going to come in and we need to move quickly in order to have all of our timelines start when we want them to start.
Gotcha. Okay. And I'm sure this is all further complicated a little bit by the fact that you and I are talking on Tuesday, January 14th. By the time this podcast runs, it will probably be Tuesday, January 21st. We will be in a new administration. The Congress will change. It has changed. It's now Republican majority in both the House and the Senate. And one senator, at least, Ted Cruz, has already indicated that he doesn't want this funding to go out at all. So I have a story on this, which I'll link in the show notes, but he wrote a letter to Alan Davidson at the NTIA back in November, suggesting that this particular grant program is unconstitutional, citing in his letter language that was written into the law by Congress that created this grant program. So that's a little specious, but but nevertheless, we are obviously entering a bit of an uncertain era and a different era than we were in when all of this stuff was passed. So to what degree is that complicating this process for you guys? And what do you want to say about the importance of this grant program to a Ted Cruz or anyone else who may want to rescind this funding?
Right. So we actually think that this work is work that everybody agrees with. And I think that where it becomes problematic, I think actually, is that there's some disagreement or confusion over the word equity. But when you talk about what we're actually doing, we're helping people have digital skills so they can get a better job. We're helping people understand how to use the internet safely so they don't get scammed. We're helping people understand how to connect with their doctor so that they don't have to be transported, long distances in order to talk to the doctor. When you talk about those uses, everyone is like, yes, that's a great idea. So it's only when you step back really far where it becomes someone like Ted Cruz would decide that they're going to draw attention. They're going to think that this is a negative, but the actual work, nobody disagrees with. And so we think what's needed right now is that awareness building of what that actual work is. So we've been encouraging our community of almost 2,000 affiliates across the United States to tell people, conduct more awareness, let folks know what you're doing, try to get some more local media attention, talk to all of your policymakers, regardless of which affiliation they have, to make sure they know what this is. Because if something crazy happens later and someone decides that, get a bug in their bonnet kind of thing, there will be more folks who are like, wait, I know what this is. And this is really important work.
Right. So you're encouraging outreach, basically, to members of Congress. In fact, I had another story up today. Well, it'll be a week ago when this runs, but about Louisiana's final BEAD proposal getting approved, and how there is also uncertainty about how BEAD moves forward under the Trump administration, with Elon Musk in the position of power that he's in particular. And I was listening to a webinar recently where Sarah Morris at the NTIA was encouraging ISPs and other BEAD stakeholders to reach out to their own lawmakers to express the importance of this program. So we might be entering a moment of advocacy with lawmakers to retain the programs that we've already passed into law. Right?
Yes, we find NDIA finds ourselves needing to remind our affiliates that telling your policymakers what it is you do is not lobbying.
Right.
You're just educating them on what's happening inside your own walls with your community and your staff members, and that is not at all under the definition of lobbying, and it should be done regularly.
Now, while it's not lobbying, do you see a more formalized way that NDIA can sort of push that effort to create a form letter or actual campaign to go out to your constituents?
Yes, we are having those conversations with the community as to how it is that we can help them. What do they need from us? We've been asking them that question the last couple of weeks so that we can provide any templates or guiding documents to help them have those conversations, because we really need folks. And I this is hard for me to ask anybody to do extra work. Right. Like, I feel bad asking folks, But I also know this is not just a now issue. This is a forever. Like, we should always be educating our policymakers as to the work that occurs in our communities, and what it's doing for the constituents of that policymaker. And so it's a good practice that we just all get into, even though it does in fact add extra work to our day to day.
Sure. Yeah. And, there's a lot that people are worried about right now. And so it may not rise to the top of their list to
Right.
reach out to their member of Congress about digital equity issues
Right.
when the average person may not even recognize the word broadband as opposed to, whatever they refer to it to go
Right.
online.
Which is why
Yeah.
I think it matters the fact that when the organizations that are doing this work, that they be the ones to share their stories. And if they have advocates in the community, other people, champions who may be not doing the work, but they're like, oh my gosh, yes, this is really important, that they also be the ones to reach out to the policymakers, because they see it, right? They've attended the celebrations when certificates are handed out because you completed a computer course, and they see the tears in people's eyes. Like, that hits them, and so then they're able to relay that in the most meaningful way.
Yeah, absolutely. Okay, that makes sense. So since we're on the topic anyway, and we're talking just a few days before the inauguration, and this podcast will run just after, how does this change in the administration and Congress impact how you guys are going into your own policy advocacy going into the next couple of years?
Yeah. So we're going at it as, yes, of course, everybody cares. It just means that we have to explain it some more to folks. And we are really trying to make sure we have those stories that touch folks. And we think that's how we're going to make sure that we don't lose any ground. Because these grants are a way for us to build that capacity and that experience. And one of the most important things that's in these digital equity grants, these competitive grants, is that there's money for evaluation. Which those of us who've been doing this work for years never had money for evaluation. Like, could barely pay people to do the work because you couldn't get enough attention on the issue. But now that we will have that evaluation funds, we'll be able to gather data and really be able to show the impact, and we'll be able to know which strategies work in which particular situations, like get into that kind of granular analysis that we really haven't been able to do in the past. And that's so exciting, because that's how we move this whole country forward, so that everyone has more access to the internet and they have more digital skills. Because to be competitive globally, we have to have more folks who are safe online and have digital skills for the next range of jobs that comes up.
Yeah, absolutely. So to that point, I have been thinking a lot that we could use a lot more research that would have been really useful in several of the fights that we found ourselves in this year, particularly around the Affordable Connectivity Program.
Right.
And, just overall, a lot of the stuff that got accomplished over the last several years, particularly at the FCC, is kind of over. The net neutrality is over. Digital discrimination is, I guess, caught up in court battles for now, and then we'll see.
We'll see.
Meanwhile, it's right, like I said before, it's Tuesday, January 14th. Tomorrow, Wednesday, January 15th, New York will officially be enforcing its Affordable Broadband Act, another holdover from 2021 that was held up in court. And it kind of makes me wonder, given I hate to say failure, but given that several things that we tried to do at the federal level are no longer at this moment in terms of broadband affordability and such, do you see more opportunities going forward to advocate for affordability policies and net neutrality policies at the state level instead, particularly given the federal environment we're entering?
Yeah, I think the other piece federally, Nicole, along with everything you just mentioned, is also the Universal Service Fund, and the fact that it's going to it's at the Supreme Court right now. NDIA is a petitioner, and so we have submitted a brief with some of our partners, and I think we'll see how the Supreme Court, how this ends up there, but it's definitely a time where I think there's enough interest and attention on it that we can move forward figuring out a modernized universal service fund, who's paying in, and then what the money is being used for. In fact, there was a position paper that came out today from a right-leaning organization. That's great. Like, let's all put our cards on the table and be figuring out how we view this and how we wanted to move forward, because we've known that this needed to happen for years and nothing happened. We were all like, yeah, we'll do it tomorrow. so tomorrow is, I think it's here. I think this is it. And the loss of the Affordable Connectivity Program, along with folks understanding the value, has more people saying, we've got to figure this out.
Absolutely. Okay, one last question for you, and then I will let you go. So let's say the NTIA moves forward with these grants, and Ted Cruz decides to give up this fight because he's
other things
over it. Exactly, he has other things to do. What is the actual timeline for, and how long does this funding last? Like, how long do you expect these programs to
it's a significant grant. These are 5-year grants.
Okay. Yeah.
Which is amazing. And that was intentional. NDIA was part of the creation of the Digital Equity Act and discussing what it should look like. And yes, if there's problems with it, I'm really sorry.
I'll put your email in the show notes so everyone can reach out.
But this 4 years of programming, a whole year for evaluation. Never before had this kind of opportunity to really figure out how to do this work and have it analyzed. Like, we know how to do the work, but we need to have outside folks come in and look at it and piece it apart and ask us hard questions. That's really how we're going to make sure that we can increase the impact of this work. And that's the opportunity in front of us. So I'm really, really excited about that.
Awesome. Well, I am too, and I'm excited to keep up with your great work and uplift all of your efforts whenever I can and whenever we get the chance to talk. So thank you so much for taking some time to chat with me on a screen today. I really appreciate your time, and we'll talk soon.
This was fabulous. Thank you, Nicole.
Thank you again, Angela, for joining me. Thank you as well to Pierre Landriau for editing this episode. Be sure to subscribe to the Light Reading Podcast for more episodes of The Divide, as well as interviews and insights from the Light Reading team. Thank you for listening. We'll see you next time.